Chapter 2364, The Poisonous Swamp. Gu Shizhou teleported and returned to her original spot. Dark, thundering clouds filled the entire sky, shielding the land from the sun. Peals of thunder accompanied streaks of lightning. A fierce gale sprung up, sweeping across the fields in a swaying motion. Leaves danced in the air, swirling and twisting in the gusts of wind. The bonfire died out in the wind, and only the bamboo tree stood unmoving. Gu Shizhou needed to stay calm at all times in order to contain the poison in her body from spreading. Emotional fluctuation had to be avoided at all costs. However, she could hardly keep calm after what happened. Her mood was even worse than the wild storms. She could feel a sudden rush of blood in her throat. As soon as she landed outside, she immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Her head started spinning while she suffered from multiple blackouts. She had to steady herself at the bamboo tree while trying to catch her breath. She needed to calm down quickly. Too weak to stand, she decided to lean against the bamboo tree and sat herself down. Time ticked by slowly, and after an hour of trying to stay calm, she spat another 3 or 4 mouthfuls of blood. Only then did the situation improve. She rubbed her forehead in disbelief. She wanted to slap herself. After everything they had been through, she was finally determined to let him go. Never had she expected that a hot kiss would cause her to completely surrender to him, so madly that they almost made love. At that very moment, she decided to forget all the misgivings and constraints. She only wanted to be with him and to be owned by him. She needed his love only to herself, she did not want to share. She trembled at the thought of her madness for losing herself in the moment. She never knew she needed him so badly to the point where she would lose control. Was she so madly in love with Huang Tu before? Occasionally, she would be overwhelmed by the illusions of her being in love with Huang Tuesday. She saw how loving he was when they were together, but those images were like dots that she could not connect. She never knew how they actually met or how they parted ways. Waves of disappointment filled her heart every time she thought about the fragments of her forgotten past. Had Huang Tu been with any other girl before? Was she jealous, just the same? She was clearly a jealous type of person. She knew herself well enough to admit it. She was jealous of Yunqing Luo. She was jealous because of how well Di Fui treated her. When she heard the message on his directed audio spell and saw the way he reacted, she was completely disappointed. Grumpily, she found a sudden urge to kill Yunqing Luo. She wanted to kill Yunqing Luo because she was jealous, not because of what she had done. She was certainly surprised by the paranoia of her unwarranted jealousy. When did she become so irrational? She had been searching for Di Fui tirelessly for the past year and never knew what would happen when they finally met. Now, she was completely paranoid. Was she already in love with him? Did she love him because she thought that he was the reincarnation of Huang Tu? Or was she in love with who he really was, the Prince Nianma that she knew? These questions had been troubling her for a while, but with no answer. With a sigh, she shook her head. There was no use to think about it as the answer would never come to her. It was completely unnecessary. Besides, he was already in love with someone else. It would only be torture if she continued to suffer from the unresolved question. She needed to stay away from the toxic relationship, regardless of which of the identity that she was in love with. Chapter 2365, The Poisonous Swamp. 2. She would never be able to share her man with another woman. Although the men of this era would generally marry a few women in their lifetime, she was not ready to accept the social norm. She would never be able to be so generous and share her husband with a few women. As soon as she knew that he had already fallen with another woman, she made a prompt decision to let him go. But was Di Fui still holding on to her? She did not want to think or care about it. She would only do what she needed to do. At that moment, she needed to stay calm until she could find the cure. Calmly, she slowly took deep breaths, in and out. Finally, she was able to remain calm and keep her thoughts away from the turbulent relationship. She tried to examine her Boda's condition and was surprised. At first, she thought that her circulatory system would be significantly affected after spitting out so much blood. To her surprise, her body was recovering even better than before. This put her mind at ease. Needless to say, it must be the benefit of eating the majestic bird, the green phoenix. She suddenly remembered that she only had a piece of the bird, and the rest of the meat was still with Di Fui. She had put it away while trying to save him, so the meat must still be in the cave. Immediately, she teleported back to the cave and realized that Di Fui had already left. Unfortunately, the meat of the bird was nowhere to be seen. The bamboo bed had also disappeared. Did Di Fui come back to take the rest of the meat with him? What about the bamboo bed? It was only an ordinary bed made of bamboo. Did he really need to take it along, too? Or had there been someone else who came into the cave to take the bamboo bed away? She went around trying to observe the cave but failed to find any traces. There was only a faint scent lingering in the air. Perhaps, he had taken the bamboo bed away. Her heart ached at the thought of their intimate encounter on the bed. She tried to suppress the thought with a deep breath, so she would not overthink it. She exited the cave and came back to the same spot one more time. There was no sign of Zhu Duqing anywhere. With a sigh, she plucked a piece of leaf from the bamboo that was nearby. She was surprised that its emerald green trunk was strong enough to withstand the strong wind from before. The bamboo tree should be quite special. The storms had wiped away many big trees, but it had not even shed a leaf in the violent winds. The bushes shook a little while the donkey could be seen running out from a clump of shrubs with a big, round tummy. It was obviously full from all the food that it had. As soon as it saw Gu Shizhou, it came running with its wagging tail. Then, it looked at the bamboo tree. Gu Shizhou was alone at the tree, plucking the leaves one by one. She had also peeled off some long, thin strips of wood and started weaving. Being absent-minded while contemplating the many matters on her mind, she never noticed that the bamboo tree trembled every time she plucked a leaf. It was even more apparent when she peeled its skin. She finally stopped torturing the tree when the donkey approached her. "Where is your master?" The donkey did not make a sound. Quietly, it walked towards the bamboo tree and gave it a kick. It was trying to tell her that he was there. Gu Shizhou did not get it. "Your master went looking for you. Haven't you seen him?" Troubled, the donkey did not know how to get the message across to her. Therefore, it gave the bamboo tree another kick. Unknowingly, it managed to hit a critical acupuncture point and turned the bamboo into the man that she once knew. Gu Shizhou witnessed a very strange scene unfold before her. Wisps of green smoke rose into the air, and soon, the tree transformed into Zhu Duqing. His hair was in a complete mess, with some parts of it even missing. He was almost bald in certain areas. His robes were unkempt and disheveled. Gu Shizhou had never seen him in such a messy state before and was shocked. Zhu Duqing noticed the bewilderment in Gu Zijia's big shocked eyes and was immediately at loss of what to do. His image was gone. Although he did not really care about his image in front of most people, things were different with Gu Shizhou. Therefore, Zhu Duqing quickly rushed into the woods to tidy up his clothes. When Zhu Duqing finally returned, Gu Shizhou was still in shock. "Are you really Zhu Duqing? You really are a bamboo monster." Zhu Duqing was already immaculately dressed, but his face was still pale. With a cough, he awkwardly corrected her, "I am a bamboo devil, not a bamboo monster. All the bamboo monsters are my juniors." "How old are you?" "About this. Honestly, I am not too sure." In fact, he had already been cultivating for tens of thousands of years. However, he did not want Gu Shizhou to know how old he really was. Gu Shizhou took a look at a green leaf in her hand. Then, she continued to observe Zhu Duqing. Had she been pulling off his hair? How did you transform into your old self so suddenly? Gu Shizhou was curious. Zhu Duqing was too arrogant to tell her the truth about Di Fui's mean trick. About that, it was all because of the storm last night. I was trying to absorb the energy from the wind, he promptly explained. Gu Shizhou did not know what to say. She had only heard about absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. Never had she heard about absorbing energy from the wind. When did plants share the same feature as a windmill? Zhu Duqing finally realized that his answer was rather odd, so he quickly changed the topic. Where is the Devil King? Gu Shizhou answered casually, the princess is in danger. He has returned to save her. Zhu Duqing seemed quite relieved. He seems to care a lot about the princess. He gave away everything just to be with her again. Otherwise, judging from how wicked he is, I believe he would torture us, all in the name of returning his favor for saving our lives. I am glad that he is gone. Very well, then. By the way, he doesn't leave the Devil Kingdom very easily. Why was he here? Gu Shizhou shook her head. Perhaps he has some other matters to attend to. He is the Devil King, after all. Maybe something he needs to deal with something personally. After a long night, the morning sun finally shed its first streak of light on the field. After a night of braving the storm, Zhu Duqing refused to stay another minute in that place. He quickly suggested that they should leave. Gu Shizhou did not object to the idea. Thus, they hit the road again. She tried hard not to think about Di Fui. She chose to believe that their previous encounter was merely a coincidence. The chances of them bumping into one another again in this big world would be really small anyway. Gu Shizhou had a feeling that destiny always made a fool out of her. When she was trying to look for him, she had never been able to see any sign. It was almost a fruitless search. Now that she refused to see him anymore, they kept seeing one another. They had only met one day ago. Just now, they met again. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates, better experience please click for visiting. At the poisonous swamp, many colorful clouds were floating around in the air. Under the light, the clouds moved and showcased their beautifully vivid palette. It was a rather mesmerizing scene. It was a very beautiful and yet dangerous place. Other than the locally grown plants, no other animals would step forth into this poisonous place. Chapter 2367, The Poisonous Swamp. 4. Once, a red-eyed golden eagle ventured into the poisonous swamp in hopes of finding food. It was known to have a strong resistance against poisonous gases, but before it managed to find any food, it had already suffocated and died as a result of the colorful and yet poisonous air. All the beings that lived in the poisonous swamp were equally poisonous. A small bite was fatal. There was not even a cure that one could use. Therefore, all the mortals and devils would avoid this place at all costs. Nonetheless, it was a heaven for all the poisonous beings in the world. There were the poisonous snakes, frogs, scorpions, and even centipedes. All these poisonous animals lingered around almost everywhere in the swamp and could hide easily in a pool of mud or the bushes. These creatures would attack any passerby with their fatal strikes. The swamp was a vast plain full of mud, about thousands of miles wide. The silver ring crocodile that Gu Shizhou was looking for was hidden in the depths of the swamp. On one particular morning, two figures could be seen wandering around in the unfrequented swamp. They were wearing weird clothes with oddly shaped caps. The caps could cover their heads completely, showing only their eyes. Even their eyes were covered with a transparent cover. Their suits were tightly fitted. It was evident that the woman was slim, and the man was strong. They possessed very powerful qin gong, as they glided across the surface of the mud swiftly without touching it. While they were crossing the mud, a red, poisonous snake suddenly appeared from one of the mud pools and took a bite on the leg of the man. However, after a while, the snake let go and fell to the ground, seemingly dead. The man was, however, unharmed. The thin fabric of his pants remained unscratched. The set of clothing was strong enough to resist any forms of battering or scratching. Also, the clothing had the ability to counteract with some of the poisonous creatures. Once a poisonous creature took a bite, it would be long dead before it could penetrate the clothing with its fangs. Mr. Zhu, you are really an expert in the use of devices. This is such a precious suit. The two figures were Zhu Duqing and Gu Shizhou. The donkey had no resistance toward the poisonous gas, so it stayed outside. Zhu Duqing was the one who prepared the suits that they used. Proudly, he waved the feather fan in his hand and said, "Of course." Exalted, he was finally able to leave the trauma of his messy image behind. Gu Shijiu was sincerely very impressed. The poison-resistant suit was even more advanced than the one she saw in the modern era. The modern suits were able to resist any other type of poison but were quite heavy. It was unlike the suit that she was currently wearing, which was unusually lightweight. It was as if she was wearing her usual attire. When she first put on the suit, she was still in doubt about the functionality of the light fabric and was unsure whether it could withstand the sharp fangs of the many creatures. Her confidence about the suit returned 2 hours after venturing into the swamp. "You seem quite aware of the place and are very well prepared," Gu Shijiu complimented. She had prepared a lot of medicines and antitoxins before she came here, but they were all useless. Zhu Duqing's suit was the solution to her every problem. His eyes shone with a hint of proudness as he responded, "I have been here a few times, so I roughly know about this place. Master, you are a woman who needs a lot of care. I shall take the responsibility of keeping you safe." He waved the feather fan in his hands proudly, acting like a man of noble character. He tried to make his words sound as gentle and loving as possible. Gu Shijiu was dumbstruck. "Thank you," she said. She had a feeling that he was acting all weird, for he had been looking after her like a gentleman all day. All his words were kind and affectionate. She was not used to it. Anyway, in a brief moment, they were both in the depths of the swamp. The swamp here was very different from any other waterlogged ground. Usually, a swamp represented a grayish landscape that was waterlogged and muddy. Bushes were present at the sides, occasionally. However, in the depths of the poisonous swamp, all they could observe was the vivid colors of the land, just like the 7-colored pool found in the hidden valley of the Huanglong Mountain. It was a glorious view filled with an array of colors. Despite the beautiful sight, wisps of colorful and yet poisonous smoke would emerge from the ground every now and then. Like people always said, the more beautiful something seemed, the more dangerous it was. The colorful fog was very poisonous, just like the creatures that lingered in it. As soon as Zhu Duqing expressed his heartfelt concern over Gu Shijiu, a rainbow suddenly emerged out of thin air. Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates, better experience please click for visiting. The rainbow was a few feet long, with a head as big as the bottom of a round flask. Its fangs were as gigantic as an elephant's tusks while its pair of eyes was shining brightly under the sun. The look in its eyes was so dark that it seemed like a void that could capture one's soul if he or she gazed into them long enough. The odd rainbow resembled a python, with an additional 8 tentacles on each side of its body. The tentacles were full of tiny little openings, like countless mouths that each had their own fangs. It was also very agile. As soon as it marked its targets, it launched forward and started attacking the duo with poisonous gas. Amid the thick layer of poisonous gas that was headed their way, there were many poisonous needles inside it as well. It was like an unstoppable storm was headed their way. Zhu Duqing took a step forward and moved Gu Shijiu behind him. "Don't worry. These poisonous needles cannot penetrate our suits." The man was so confident that he only used the feather fan in his hand to cover up his face. The rest of his body was exposed to the needles. Fortunately, upon contact, the needles turned into smoke and disappeared. After a round of poisonous needles disintegrating into thin air, Du Zhuqing seemed quite proud of his creation. "These poisonous needles can never affect me." Before he was finished with his sentence, Gu Shijiu suddenly took his wrist in a tight grip as she urged, "Let's go. Quickly." She quickly used her teleportation and fled with Zhu Duqing. The environment here was full of danger almost everywhere, so Gu Shijiu dared not simply use her teleportation. One mistake and they could both end up in the mouth of a beast. Therefore, she chose to use her teleportation skill and went back to where they came from. The monster did not follow them. There was no way it could find them when she used her teleportation skill. From a distance, they could hear the monster's long howl, as if crying out in fury. The sound was so loud that the ground started to tremble a little. There is no need for us to hide. The poisonous needles cannot do anything to us. Zhu Duqing sighed. Gu Shijiu interrupted him, quick. Take off the suit. Ah. Zhu Duqing was obviously taken by surprise. His heart skipped a beat as soon as he heard her sudden demand. Soon, he realized what was really happening. Some parts of the suit must have been compromised, he thought. He could feel that the area around his tummy was somewhat chilly. That area of the suit had unfortunately corroded while other parts of his suit were slowly corroding, too. Fortunately, he was wearing another layer of inner robes. Otherwise, he would have to strip off all of his clothes and be naked. Although the poisonous needles from the monster were not able to penetrate the suit, the poison was acidic enough to destroy his suit. The corrosion did not seem to slow down, and soon, his inner robes were corroding as well. Panicked, Zhu Duqing had no time to care about his image. He quickly took the suit off and used a cloth to wipe away the corroding part of his inner robes, in hopes to wipe away the remaining poison. The cloth in his hand corroded as well when he was desperately trying to clean his robes. If he had not tossed it away sooner, his hand would be corroded, too. The affected parts of his robes were starting to change color too. He had to take off his inner robes. Chapter 2369, The Poisonous Swamp, 6. If the corrosion continued, the next affected area would be his bare skin. However, should he choose to take off his inner robes, his flesh would melt away in the poisonous gas without any layer of protection. Turning back seemed to be the only option. They needed to leave the swamp as soon as possible. Nonetheless, they had spent almost half a day traveling to the core of the swamp. If they chose to return, all the walking and traveling would be in vain. Zhu Duqing did not want to become a burden to Gu Shijiu, so he proposed to take a risk. The poison may not necessarily corrode my inner robes. Let us walk some more, perhaps there will be a place where I can stop and change my robes. How many times have you been here? Are you sure that there is a place where we can stop? I have been here 3 times, but have never made it this far. Zhu Duqing had only been to the outskirts, so he had no idea how the depths of the swamp actually looked like. No way, she rejected, unwilling to take the risk. She had time, so she could start the journey over. She took Zhu Duqing's wrist tightly in her hand and said, "Let's go. We will talk later." Before she used her teleportation to escape with Zhu Duqing to safety, they could clearly hear a lady asking for help from afar. "Help me." Astonished, Gu Shijiu was able to recognize the voice. It was Yunqing Luo. She had never expected her to be here as well. If that were the case, then Di Fui must be here too. Her voice was obviously trembling with a state of alarm. She must have got herself into serious trouble. "Princess, don't worry. The Devil King will be back soon. Princess, you should stay in the net. Don't worry. The centipedes are not able to penetrate the safety net that the Devil King has set up." 2 servants could be heard comforting the princess. In the background, there was some fighting going on. Apparently, all 3 of them must have fallen into a siege with the centipedes. Gu Shijiu noticed someone mentioned about a safety net. Determined, she took a look at the corroding part of Zhu Duqing's inner robes. He still had 3 minutes before the corrosion started affecting his skin. "Let's go. We should help them." Gu Shijiu took Zhu Duqing along as she teleported. As expected, she saw a group of about 18 poisonous centipedes in striking blue color surrounding 2 men and a safety net by the side of the marshes. The 2 men had geared up in heavy suits that were seemingly poison-resistant. However, they were struggling in the group of poisonous centipedes. Their kung fu was obviously very powerful. This could be seen from their every move, which remained unaffected by the weight of their suits. Every strike was high-powered. The weapons in their hands seemed to be specially created and were unusually sharp. While they were fighting the centipedes, they had accidentally hit some stones that were easily sliced into half. It was as if the stones were merely pieces of soft curd. The creatures had a stronger surface as compared to the stones, apparently. When the men tried to hit the centipedes with their swords, there was not even a scratch on their skin. The two men were still doing quite well at the moment, but it was a terrible fight. Sometimes, the poisonous centipedes would leap and jump onto their bodies. They were only alive because of their suits. These centipedes were far greater than the normal ones and moved at a great speed, too. It was, indeed, a tough fight for survival. Moreover, these centipedes kept coming back in larger and larger groups. Tons of striking blue creatures kept coming out from the muddy ground. It was a rather creepy sight to look at. There was a white net by the men's side with someone seemingly captured in it. The one in the net could see clearly what was happening on the outside, but the outsiders could not peep into the net to see who was inside. It was Fuy's precious safety net. The Divine Lord gave the precious item to him as a gift. It was able to withstand all sorts of external harm or poison. The only disadvantage of the net was its immobility. Yunqing Luo was the person who was safely secured within the net. She could see everything unfold very clearly from the inside. Some centipedes started to climb onto the net, and she was immediately terrified. Some of these centipedes were surprisingly smart. Instead of trying to go through the net, they buried their heads into the ground and dug a way in from below. They were going after Yunqing Luo. The wizardry barrier on the ground was not as secure as the net. Yunqing Luo knew that the centipedes would get her soon enough. Once stung, the wound would cause so much agony that Yunqing Luo would rather die. She knew about the harm that the centipedes were capable of doing, so she could not help but scream in fear. Chaotically, the two escorts from the palace were unable to take care of her needs at the moment. I can help you to get rid of these centipedes, but you must promise me one thing in return. Gu Shijiu stood on a tree nearby and offered them a deal. Shocked, the escorts were unable to tell who she really was, for her entire body was covered in the suit. They gasped in surprise while trying to find out her identity. They dared not act impulsively, as they believed that she must be someone powerful to be here in the poisonous swamp. Before the Devil King left, he told the men to take care of the princess and make sure that she was safe from any harm. Therefore, the escorts were determined to fight the centipedes despite knowing that they would not be able to hold on much longer. Who are you? Why should we trust you? One of the escorts asked while fending off the centipedes. Without hesitating, Gu Shijiu used her teleportation skill and arrived promptly next to him. She released a fiery red needle and aimed it directly at one of the centipedes that were eagerly attacking the man. The needle did not penetrate the shield of the centipede but was able to keep it back. Trembling in frailty, the creature immediately retreated a few feet away. It waved its tentacles around in surrender and ran away. Apparently, the centipedes were afraid of the needle. The escorts were convinced. Under what condition? Let my friend have a quick change in the safety net. We only require a brief moment. Find authorized novels and webnovel faster updates, better experience please click for visiting. Gu Shijiu told them her terms. Zhu Duqing then made his appearance for the first time. Although his face was concealed under a mask, the feather fan in his hand was his signature item. The escorts of the palace immediately recognized him, though they had never met before. They had heard about Gu Zijia's teleportation skill before from their comrades. Also, the Devil King had once reminded them about Gu Shijiu. As soon as they knew who they were, they immediately agreed to her terms. However, they also voiced out their concerns. We agree to the deal. However, the safety net belongs to the Devil King, and we have no way to open it. If Mr. Zhu would like to enter and have a quick change, you would have to wait until the Devil King returns. There is no need. I can open it. Gu Shijiu added, I only need you to cooperate. In the interest of time, the men decided not to go against her request. As soon as both parties agreed to the terms, Gu Shijiu had nothing to worry about. She took a leap and went into the core of the group of emerging centipedes. With a few flicks, she scattered some powder towards the creatures. The centipedes quickly ran away. They were allergic to the powder the same way snakes were allergic to sulfur. In the blink of an eye, all the centipedes were already gone, and tranquility returned to the place. The two escorts were very impressed by what she could do. Quickly, they invited Gu Shizhou into the net. When she was still with Di Fui, he once told her the proper way to create an opening and enter the safety net. It was an easy task for her. Once the net was open, Yunqing Luo could be seen walking out from it. She held her head up high like an arrogant princess. "It is you. Gu Shizhou, I hate you," she said sternly. Chapter 2371, The Poisonous Swamp, 8. Gu Shizhou did not really care what she said. What a coincidence. I do not like you, as well. Yunqing Luo did not say anything more. Gu Shizhou was reluctant to waste any more time with her, so she proceeded to let Zhu Duqing into the net. Zhu Duqing had brought some extra poison-resistant suits with him. He went into the net and quickly got changed. Soon, he knocked onto the net and let Gu Shizhou know that he was done. His suit was still the same, lightweight and comfortable. The two escorts were curious about the suit, so they asked, "Do your suits have the resistance against the poisonous environment here?" Zhu Duqing gave them a laugh and responded in a superior manner, "The suit does not only protect me against the poisonous air. It also works well against any sort of physical harm or animal bite. Most importantly, it is as lightweight as a normal garment. What are you wearing? You look like two bulky chimpanzees." The men were speechless by his remark. "Our suits are obviously not as good as yours. Why don't we cooperate?" A voice suddenly emerged from a distance while a man was walking slowly towards them. The man had purple robes, smooth black hair, and the signature ruby-red gem on a headband. The ruby-red gem had a rather odd shape that highly resembled the shape of a fox's eye. It shone with great brilliance under light and was able to catch the attention of distant observers. Also, he was wearing a mask in the shape of a fox's face that covered almost his entire face, except for his bright eyes and his crimson lips. His every gesture was unusually graceful. Di Fui had made his return. Gu Zijia's expression changed abruptly, but he did not notice. She did not want to have anything to do with Di Fui and his men, so she urged, "Zhu Duqing, let us go." Zhu Duqing refused to cooperate with Di Fui, too, for he was worried that he might fall into another trap. Thus, he agreed promptly, "All right." He then reached out his hand and grabbed Gu Zijia's sleeve. "Will you teleportation us away?" Gu Shizhou had the same thought, so she grabbed his hand and was ready to leave. All of a sudden, the purple figure flashed by before their eyes and squeezed between them. Zhu Duqing had to take a few steps back to make space for the sudden intruder. "What are you trying to do?" he asked in fury. The man who intruded was obviously Di Fui. "Let us talk about how you should repay me for saving your lives," he frankly remarked. Zhu Duqing was speechless while Gu Shizhou decided to remain just as quiet. They decided to let him speak. Di Fui's terms were very simple. Both parties would combine into a team, and Zhu Duqing should provide another 3 suits to Di Fui's group. In return, Di Fui would be responsible for their safety. Also, they would work together to capture the silver ring crocodile. The silver ring crocodiles were known to be very violent and fierce. They were the most poisonous creatures out of all of this inhabitable, poisonous land. If Gu Shizhou were as strong as before, the creatures would pose no risk at all as long as she proceeded carefully. However, her current level of spiritual power and physical condition obviously made her incapable of capturing the crocodile alone. She was not very confident about doing so even with the help of Zhu Duqing. If they were willing to work with Di Fui, the success rate would be highly increased. She was pretty sure that they would succeed as long as Di Fui was involved. Gu Shizhou looked away and started contemplating. She knew exactly which option was the best, but the thought of seeing Di Fui and Yunqing Luo together made her feel uncomfortable. Her jealousy had told her not to agree to his terms. "Are you afraid of me?" Di Fui raised the question. "What should I be afraid of?" Gu Shizhou looked at him with a frown. Half smilingly, Di Fui continued to observe her without saying anything. Gu Shizhou knew that he was trying to trigger her. She looked at him proudly in the eye and said, "You are overthinking. I just hate being manipulated by you for the same reason again." Di Fui was relieved. "I assume that you have agreed then. I have always known that you are a very sensible lady." Chapter 2372, Working together. Gu Shizhou did not know what to say. She was, indeed, a rational woman. In fact, she could easily find many reasons to keep him and Yunqing Luo far, far away, but it would not be practical right now. Speaking of which, she actually thought that his attire was a little odd today. The way he dressed seemed quite familiar, like someone she once knew. She was mad at him before they met in the poisonous swamp. But seeing him in this attire managed to calm her down. She even had a sudden urge of rushing into his arms, just to indulge herself in his embrace. Certainly, she managed to suppress the urge. However, she could not help but stare at the headband that he had visibly placed on his forehead. She wondered why he did not dress in his signature red, which was the way he used to dress as the Devil King. The red robes were, actually, very stylish and eye-catching. Was he trying to keep a low profile? He was wearing the red robes just yesterday. Nonetheless, she felt that purple was a more suitable color for him. Purple was the color of elegance, rebellion, and, most importantly, grace. Zhu Duqing did not intend to cooperate with Di Fui, as he wanted to spend some time alone with Gu Shizhou. The donkey's presence was still tolerable, though he was not quite happy about having it around all the time. As for Di Fui, Zhu Duqing refused to have him around at all. However, he could not reject Di Fui's proposal, as the deal was actually a form of compensation for him saving their lives. Di Fui had made it clear that the deal was the only form of compensation. Zhu Duqing could always walk away from the deal and shamelessly pretend that nothing had ever happened. He had thought about it. However, he changed his mind when Di Fui voiced out his concern. "Are you sure that she can safely approach the silver ring crocodile? How much do you know about the poisonous swamp? Are you sure that you are lucky enough to find another place to change the next time and not cause her effort to be in vain?" Thus, Zhu Duqing kept absolutely quiet. It was not the time for arguments. It was more important to focus on the plan instead. Zhu Duqing had a few sets of the poison-resistant suits with him, at least 8 sets in total. He brought extras in case anything went wrong. For now, he had to share 3 sets with another group of people. He took a look at Di Fui and asked, "Don't you need one?" Di Fui gave his sleeve a flick and said proudly, "There is no need." His robes were made to have a strong resistance against many sorts of poisons. The red ruby on his forehead and the mask were both made to resist the poisonous environment as well. Also, he knew about a special technique, where he could control his breath and regulate his breathing to purify the poisonous gas. Therefore, he remained unharmed by the toxic air. Everyone took turns to change in the safety net. Yun Qingluo's face was as pale as a sheet. She did not talk much. As soon as she changed into the suit, she stood behind Di Fui while keeping a suitable distance from him. She looked into the horizon. As for Di Fui, he never looked directly at Yunqing Luo. As Gu Shizhou was very observant, she realized everything that happened between them. Were they having an argument? Regardless, she did not want to dive into it. After all, their argument was none of her business. She only cared about one thing. Where is Hao? She did not get to ask about the child last night. Now she finally got the chance. In the Devil Palace. "I will make sure that he is well taken care of, so you do not have to worry," Di Fui said with a smile. Chapter 2373, Working Together, 2. He gave Gu Shizhou a judgmental look, for she did not seem like the person who would care for a child of unknown background and origin. Hesitantly, he half-jokingly added, "He is our child. I will not make him suffer." Gu Shizhou only responded briefly with a nod. She did not feel the need to discuss the child's parenthood at this time. She was just overwhelmed by her guilty conscience. Moreover, it was not appropriate for him to talk about the child that he had with another woman in front of Yunqing Luo. Shouldn't he be worried that she would be jealous? Or was he using the child to trigger her even more, so she would obey him. Perhaps, there was indeed an argument between Di Fui and Yunqing Luo as they refused to talk to one another at the moment. And maybe, the only reason Di Fui invited Gu Shijiu along was to make Yunqing Luo feel a sense of competition. Her mind swirled with the many different possibilities. She had to stop. Gu Shijiu realized that every time something that was related to Di Fui happened, she always tended to overthink the entire situation. It was not like her at all. For now, she should focus on the search for the silver ring crocodile. Speaking of which, she wondered how Di Fui found out that she was actually looking for the silver ring crocodile. He seemed to be looking for the same thing as well. What was the crocodile for? She had to ask him. How did you know that I was looking for the silver ring crocodile? Aren't you going to use its heart as the guiding herb for your antitoxin? He answered. Hesitantly, Gu Shijiu agreed. Yes. She then threw another hateful look to Yunqing Luo and added, thanks to her. Yunqing Luo's face was still pale. Quietly, she pretended like she did not hear anything and continued to stare blankly into the distance. That is all that matters. Although we came from different paths, we all share the same purpose. Gu Zijia's expression changed a little. Apparently, Yunqing Luo was forced to be here. Di Fui must have made her do so. That must be the reason for their argument, she thought. The one who caused the trouble must be the one who ended it. Was he trying to show him how sincere he was in finding a solution? Was he trying to ask for her forgiveness for what Yunqing Luo had done, simply by finding the cure? He was unnecessarily thoughtful. Gu Shijiu was somewhat convinced that Di Fui actually wanted to be a friend, though they were not able to be together as a couple. She took a deep breath and answered smilingly, thanks for doing this for me. I shall accept your kindness. All right, I see that all of us here share a common goal. What should we do next? Di Fui looked at her and answered, I went on an exploration into the depths of the swamp and realized that the place was terribly dangerous. It is surrounded by many kinds of savagely fierce and poisonous creatures. If we choose to fight them off in the core, it would be too dangerous for us, as we might draw unnecessary attention from other creatures. Moreover, the silver ring crocodiles live in groups. When one of them is under attack, the others will defend it. We have to draw the specific silver ring crocodile out of its group and kill it alone. Gu Shijiu thought about his proposal for a moment. I can teleport. I will draw the crocodile out of its group, while the rest of you work together and attack it at another spot. No one was able to escape faster than her. She was the best candidate to be the bait and draw out the crocodile. However, Di Fui disagreed. No way, it is too dangerous for you to act alone. Besides, Yunqing Luo needs to be there as well. We will go with you. Gu Shijiu looked at him in disbelief. Why is her presence required? Does she know about the place well? If Yunqing Luo knew how to make the poison by using the silver ring crocodile, she must have been here in the poisonous swamp before and managed to escape safely. She must know a thing or two about this palace. Di Fui did not say anything but looked at Yunqing Luo sternly. Chapter 2374, Working Together. 3. Yunqing Luo had once told him that her blood was required to draw the attention of the particular crocodile. Also, she must be the one to take her blood sample. If others chose to take her blood forcibly, the blood would not work as bait for the silver ring crocodile anymore. However, it was important to note that Yunqing Luo may not have told the entire truth. Di Fui did not want to risk his life and venture into the unknown all because of her lies. In return, he made a few promises to Yunqing Luo in favor for her help. For example, when everything had been solved, he would let her go safely. She also requested that he not tell anyone about what happened to help her keep her dignity. If Di Fui chose to disagree, Yunqing Luo would rather die in agony than give out her blood to save her enemy's life. Her terms were not difficult to be fulfilled, so Di Fui agreed. He was a man of his word, so Yunqing Luo was not too concerned. If she did everything that she promised, he would definitely deliver. To answer Gu Zijia's curiosity, Di Fui briefly added, whoever started the trouble should end it. We have to find a particular silver ring crocodile that was used to make the poison in the first place. Other crocodiles would not work. Only she knows the way to find it, so she has to come. Gu Shizhou found his explanation quite unbelievable but made no further comment, for she could not tell if what he said was true or not. Instead, they discussed who should be the bait and where was the best location to kill the crocodile. These silver ring crocodiles were very alert, and they always stayed near to the core of the swamp. Therefore, they had to choose a spot that was close to the core. However, Di Fui had done his research and found that no place around the center was safe enough for them to fight those creatures. In addition to the toxic air, there were also countless of other poisonous creatures there. The discussion continued, but no clear plan was formed. All of a sudden, Yunqing Luo broke her silence and suggested, "I know a secret place that is not too far away from where the crocodiles live. Also, there will not be any other creatures there." All eyes were then locked on her. To Gu Zijia's surprise, Yunqing Luo had willingly participated in the discussion. Di Fui did not seem quite as surprised. "Where is the secret place?" Yunqing Luo turned around and started walking. "Follow me." She led the way. Gu Shizhou was unsure if she should trust her, but she followed her anyway. Di Fui signaled his men to stay close with Yunqing Luo to keep her safe too. As for himself, he chose to walk side by side with Gu Shizhou. Zhu Duqing would not let himself be left behind, so he quickly walked next to Gu Shizhou as well. Unlike the other two, he could not convince himself to follow Yunqing Luo around. "Is she reliable? She'd better not take us to a dump site," he whispered. Gu Shizhou shook her head and said, "The worst-case scenario is that we end up in a place that is equally unsafe. For now, let us give her a chance." Zhu Duqing did not want to argue with his master, so he kept quiet. Di Fui quickly added, "Shizhou is still the smart one." Gu Shizhou said nothing more but focused on Yunqing Luo, who was still taking the lead. She walked with her head held high and did not look back at all, but her fingers were obviously clenched in frustration. She must be jealous that Di Fui was walking with Gu Shizhou. It seemed that Di Fui was trying to make Yunqing Luo jealous. Perhaps, Gu Shizhou was just a tool to help him achieve that. A sudden idea occurred to Gu Shizhou. She wanted to make Yunqing Luo feel bad, though she had decided not to take revenge on her because of Di Fui. She smiled and drew closer to Di Fui as she said, "You know me well. You are, indeed, the father of my child." She would rarely get close to Di Fui, so he took the opportunity and held on to her waist. "Of course. You are the mother of my child." He pulled her entirely into his arms while Gu Shizhou was momentarily frozen by his enthusiasm. His display of affection was slightly beyond her tolerance. Chapter 2375, Working Together, for, softly, she protested, but he did not let her go. Instead, he held on to her even tighter. The two escorts were quite observant. They noticed that Di Fui was busy showering the lady with affection, but they dared not look back. Attentively, they only listened closely to the conversation. Certainly, they had not forgotten that Yunqing Luo's safety was their biggest concern. They had to be alert to keep her away from danger. As for Zhu Duqing, he frowned in utter annoyance. Not wanting to observe this any longer, he reached out his hand, trying to pull Gu Shizhou away, but before he managed to touch her sleeve, Di Fui seemed to have blocked his approach. Zhu Duqing was speechless while Di Fui gave him a nonchalant look that was not quite friendly as a sign for him to stay away. Suddenly, Zhu Duqing was reminded about what happened the night before, when Di Fui turned him into a bamboo tree. If he were to provoke Di Fui even more, he would probably turn Zhu Duqing back into an immobile bamboo tree in this land full of danger with nowhere to escape. Overwhelmed by a sudden sense of panic, he decided not to do anything that would annoy Di Fui, though compliance was certainly against his will. Gu Shizhou tried to pull her hand out of Di Fui's grasp but was not successful. Di Fui held on to her even tighter, making her regret making the mistake in the first place. "Let me go." She sent a directed audio to him. "I will not." His smile remained, but the way he replied was rather firm. You should not be using me as an excuse to make her feel bad. Baby, we have a son together. You and I are a couple. Gu Shizhou was speechless. Determined, she confessed, Di Fui, as I have told you, I found the child in the woods and adopted him. There is no need for you to keep me around, just for me to play the role of a mother. Try to find me a daughter. Gu Shizhou did not answer, for she did not know what to say. She stomped on his foot in frustration, thus leaving a mark on his nicely clean shoe. Your shoe is dirty. Use the cleaning spell to get rid of the dirt. In order to perform the cleaning spell, he would have to let go of her waist. Smilingly, Di Fui answered, the mark is pretty nice, it is like the motif of a flower. I will keep it. Irritated, Gu Shizhou then offered, should I make another motif on the other shoe, so they can become a pair? I do not like things that come in pairs. Let it be. It looks best when it is created randomly. Deliberation is not the style I would prefer. DFYI gave her an unexpected answer. Gu Shizhou was speechless again. He was indeed very confusing sometimes. Suddenly, Di Fui whispered into her ears, I knew that you were trying to make her feel jealous as a form of revenge. Gu Shizhou did not know how he realized her intention. The man must be using her to make Yunqing Luo feel bad as well. At this rate, would it be surprising if Yunqing Luo decided to lead them to their doom? All of a sudden, Yunqing Luo could be heard screaming. A giant mouth appeared right in front of her very quickly and unexpectedly. Very soon, a streak of red lights could be seen flashing out from the giant mouth that was aimed right at Yunqing Luo. The attack caught everyone off guard. Even the two escorts behind her were unable to react. Before the streak of red lights managed to take Yunqing Luo away, another flash of seven-colored light came to the rescue. Crack! After a loud explosion, the creature trembled helplessly on the ground. It was already cut into half, and there was blood everywhere. Chapter 2376, Working Together, 5, the seemingly red light from before was actually a tongue. The beast behind the tongue was usually very aggressive and violent. Even without its tongue, it would have no intention of letting Yunqing Luo go. It was ready to swallow her at any opportunity. The two escorts tried to respond to the situation to save their princess. However, to their surprise, another red light flashed by and forced them to retreat. Meanwhile, Yunqing Luo was on the verge of being swallowed alive before a seven-colored light came to the rescue. It was from Di Fui. He thought he was able to force the creature to let go of Yunqing Luo with one strike, but it was not the case. He could only take down one of the creatures. Yunqing Luo must not die. Hence, without a second thought, he rushed into the mouth of the creature that held Yunqing Luo hostage. Before the creature sealed its mouth, Di Fui was able to take Yunqing Luo's hand. He launched another strike with his left arm and aimed it exactly at the tongue that Yunqing Luo was unfortunately tangled with. Blood splashed out like a fountain while the creature was clearly in pain as it loosened its tongue. Di Fui seized the brief window and pulled Yunqing Luo out of its mouth, forcibly. He then pushed her away to the escorts, who tried to keep her balance. Di Fui's entire body was already halfway in the creature's mouth. He managed to get Yunqing Luo out but was unable to free himself. In a fit of rage, the mouth full of sharp teeth was closing up. Fortunately, Di Fui was very agile. He would not let himself die, though he was unable to escape. With a leap, he rolled into the creature's big mouth. Then, before its mouth was completely sealed, he raised his sword and quickly stood it tall to prevent the beast from closing its mouth. There was a slight gap, so he quickly escaped through it. Gu Shizhou raised her arms and grabbed him before using her teleportation skill. In the blink of an eye, they were already 10 feet away from the creature. Di Fui looked up and saw a pair of pitch-black eyes staring back at him. Trembling, Gu Shizhou asked, "Are you trying to kill yourself?" She screamed at him at a very high pitch, fueled by her frustration. Then, she quickly studied him to see if he was hurt. There was no apparent injury, so she decided to read his pulse to see if he was suffering any internal injuries. His pulse was not faltering, so he must be okay. Relieved, she could finally feel her legs shaking involuntarily. She cared about him, there was no doubt about that. His impulsive act had scared her. Gratefully, Di Fui held her hand in his and reassured, "Have I scared you? Don't worry. I am fine." Gu Shijiu then realized that she had been a little dramatic, so she pulled her hand back and tried to sound unemotional. "You are overthinking. I only hope that none of my teammates are hurt." She was indeed stubborn. Unfortunately, her immediate reactions had completely sold her out before. With a tug, Di Fui took her in his arms and gave her a tight squeeze. Softly, he whispered into her ear, "I am not overthinking." He then added, "You really do care about me. You may deny it as much as you want, but I know that you care." Gu Shijiu did not know what to say. She was not very comfortable with his flirtatious behavior, as there was still another woman waiting for him over there. Was he trying to put up a show? Nonetheless, her heart throbbed with excitement, and she could not think straight. This time, he released her before she even asked. With a gentle tap on her shoulder, he said, "Wait for me right here. I will go and kill the wild animal." He took a quick leap and raced towards the venomous, gigantic beast that resembled a seven-colored dinosaur. The beast was in a rage as it had been hiding in the bushes for some time in an attempt to capture and swallow Yunqing Luo alive, but to no benefit. Instead, it had to suffer an injury. Chapter 2377, Working Together, 6. The beast was initially ecstatic as it thought it was getting a buy one free one deal, however, its upper chest was penetrated before it could swallow any of them. It was in pain and anger. Hence, it came out from hiding and blocked everyone's way. It had colorful scales on its body, yet, it looked strange and ferocious. Besides that, it seemed to be quite lazy as it stayed at the same spot for an extended time. Instead of hunting, it seemed to wait for its prey. Occasionally, when some harmful beasts passed by its mouth, they would be caught by its tongue and become its food. Unfortunately, it had a bad day today. Two of the guardians from the Devil Palace brought Yunqing Luo to a safer place and helped her up to her feet. When she had steadied herself, one of the guardians guarded her while the other one rushed over to the scene. The beast looked extremely ferocious, but it was not very nimble when it fought. It could only defend itself with its thick and rough skin. Its strongest weapon was its three tongues. However, any expert in kung fu would not be eaten as long they were cautious enough during the battle. Apparently, Di Fui was better than expected, coupled with the help of his guardian, it was a guaranteed win for this battle. As expected, the beast was defeated in just 15 minutes. Di Fui sliced its throat with a sword, and it slumped on the floor. When it seemed lifeless, the guardian who worked together with Di Fui kicked the dead body. It looks ferocious but was completely useless. Before he finished talking, Di Fui shouted, "Retreat." He pushed the guardian backward. Almost at the same time, the dead body exploded like a bomb. It was just like a firecracker explosion. A minute later, the guardian slowly got up from the ground and tried to clean all the flesh that was splattered on his body. He puked. "What's this? It exploded even after it is dead." He was the nearest to the venomous beast, so it might not have only been splashes of flesh and blood from the creature if Di Fui did not push him away in time. Even though Gu Shijiu had struggled out from Di Fui's arms earlier, he managed to rush to her in time and pull her into his embrace when the explosion occurred. He protected her with his body and even covered her ears. Therefore, she only heard a soft burst, and she did not see anything. His embrace was as warm as usual, and she felt a warmth in her heart when she was tightly embraced in his arms. She almost wrapped her arms around his waist too. Fortunately, she managed to stop her urge and struggled out from his embrace, like how she used to do. She took a glimpse of Yunqing Luo and noticed that the guardian protected her, and she managed to avoid the explosion. However, she was slightly slow and got splashed by some blood. Thus, she was busy cleaning herself. Although her face was covered by a mask and Gu Shijiu could not see her facial expressions, her fingers were shaking, and she seemed to be affected. Gu Shijiu shifted her gaze away and silently pondered. She wondered if Yunqing Luo was miserable. When she turned back, she found Zhu Duqing pursing his lips as he stared at her. She coughed softly and shifted her gaze away only to find Di Fui pondering as he walked around the dead body. He turned around and asked Yunqing Luo, "Do you know what it is?" Yunqing Luo held her breath and shook her head. "I don't know." Di Fui asked Gu Shijiu, "Do you know?" Gu Shijiu also shook her head. There were too many unknown species in the swamp, including that venomous beast. Di Fui said nothing more. There were so many kinds of poisonous creatures lingering around in the swamp. The sudden emergence of the beast did not surprise him. Fortunately, the incident was finally over. Yunqing Luo's kung fu was the worst among them all. She was taking the lead before, but Di Fui decided that she should walk in the middle of the line in order to prevent the same incident from happening. She promptly agreed to him. Nevertheless, the two escorts from the palace continued to stay by her side to protect her. Di Fui, along with Gu Shijiu, took turns to take the lead while Zhu Duqing remained as the last man in the line. Gu Shijiu could understand why Di Fui wanted to lead, but she did not quite know why he had to take her together with him. She was just as weak, with only a year left to spare if she did not find the cure. It would not be so appropriate for her to take the lead, would it? In fact, she was not allowed to use her spiritual power at the moment to prevent worsening her situation. It would be better to avoid using her power at all in order to prevent the toxins in her body from reacting again. Furthermore, even though she had agreed to take the lead with him, she did understand why he had to keep holding her hand. She tried to suppress the urge to question him but failed. "I think we should keep a distance from one another. If anything happens unexpectedly, at least one of us may survive the attack." Di Fui was holding her left hand and did it so naturally. "You are good at teleporting. If there really is any unexpected event, I believe that we can immediately teleport to safety," he swiftly replied. Gu Shijiu did not argue with him, so both of them continued the journey. If they chose to teleport away in times of danger and left the rest of the people to die, it would not be entirely inappropriate. However, she recalled how Di Fui risked his life just to get Yunqing Luo to safety. The past incident was really a close call. "If I had not reached out to you in time, would you end up in the beast's stomach?" Di Fui gave her a firm nod. "Yes." Gu Shijiu was surprised by his response. "Were you trying to get yourself killed?" she demanded furiously. "You have been pushing me away." "I certainly have thought about killing myself," he said calmly while staring at her. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates, better experience. Please click for visiting. Gu Shijiu did not know what to say. She knew that if she had not been able to pull him out in time, he would find another alternative and fight his way out alive by stabbing the creature right in his stomach. He had a protective barrier around his body, so the gastric acid would not do him any harm. He knew how to control his breath and survive without the need for air. There was certainly enough time for him to slash the creature's stomach open. However, it was unavoidable that he would get his entire body stained in the blood of the beast. Gu Shijiu had been trying to keep him away, and yet he would not stop flirting with her. He even tried to act cute and look pitiful in order to get her attention. The worst thing about it was that she seemed to be quite comfortable with him. Her cold heart started to burn with a sense of desire. She recalled that Di Fui told her that he had already put their past behind him and that he never wanted to see her again. What was all this about, then? The man was, without a doubt, a drama king. There was no way she could tell what he was really up to. Meanwhile, the team continued to explore the poisonous swamp by following Yunqing Luo's guidance. To their surprise, they managed to find an underground tunnel, hidden beneath rows of bright red bushes. They proceeded into the tunnel, only to realize that it was actually a very deep passage with twists and turns that left them no clue about the final destination. "This is a shortcut," Yunqing Luo said. "I used the passage to go into the depths of the swamp. At the end of the tunnel, there is a hall that is connected to the nest of the silver ring crocodiles. It has been years since I last came here, so I am not sure if the place is still well intact. You may choose to take the path or not." The team was rather uncertain but believed that the passage would be helpful. Chapter 2379, Being Pampered. The underground tunnel was about 100 meters deep into the surface of the earth. The entire passage was dark and moist. The walls were not evenly scrapped, and the group believed that the passage was created when a giant creature made its way through the ground. Occasionally, there would be some pools of mud on the ground, which was something very commonly found in an underground cave. Gu Shijiu was still taking the lead at that point. Out of curiosity, she would walk closely to the walls of the cave and take a closer look. Di Fui followed her. "What have you found?" he asked. "This place has been abandoned for a long time, at least 10 years. "What else?" "The passage must have been created by some giant beast, perhaps an underground dragon. There is no sign of human activity involved in the making of it." "What do you think?" "I think that something is not quite right about this cave. I have never heard about such a gigantic beast in the poisonous swamp." Di Fui sighed. "Neither have I. Due to the lack of human involvement here in the swamp, it is normal that some unknown beasts still exist." She nodded in agreement without saying anything. To be honest, she did not have much faith in Yunqing Luo, as she believed that Yunqing Luo must still be planning something big and evil. At the moment, she had not figured it out. She could only hope that Di Fui had really convinced Yunqing Luo. After all, Yunqing Luo was really obsessed with Di Fui and would listen to everything that he said, which was why she was here in the poisonous swamp with him, though it was against her will. The team continued walking deeper into the passage. It was a rather peaceful walk without many obstacles. Sometimes, they would run into poisonous beasts that were accidentally trapped in the cave, but the beasts did not pose any great threat. Di Fui could always finish them off easily. The dangers posed in the cave were significantly lower than that of the swamp. The escorts were relieved. The safety of the princess had always been their greatest responsibility ever since they left the palace. It was a rather exhausting task, especially in this poisonous swamp where every encounter was a fight. There was hardly any time for them to catch their breaths or take a rest. The underground passage was the first time that they could catch a breath. The two escorts continued their journey next to Yunqing Luo, who was in the middle. She was very particular with hygienic issues and would not let anyone touch her, so they dared not get too close, for fear that she would be disgusted. They knew a little about the prolonged and bitter quarrel between Princess Yuanyuan and Gu Shijiu. Also, they were aware of the prince's affection for the Devil King. They also knew that Di Fui treated her as his sister because he was not interested in anything intimate. They also knew that Princess Yuanyuan was punished by the Devil King for what she had done to Gu Shijiu, so they actually thought that she would not be able to leave her bed for at least a month. To their surprise, she was with them in the swamp after only a few days. The two men did not know the feud that existed between the rest of the people. It was obvious that the Devil King had treated the princess and Gu Shijiu very differently. He obviously fancied the latter. They noticed that Princess Yuanyuan did not have much strength left. Her spiritual power was only slightly better than an ordinary mortal. In the heart of this poisonous swamp, her life was at the greatest risk, like an egg with a cracked shell that could be destroyed anytime. Yunqing Luo knew how to manipulate people. She used to be really kind to all of Di Fui's courtiers and would send them some gifts every now and then, so the courtiers were quite friendly with her. Di Fui used to pamper her all the time, so the courtiers treated her the same. They would do or give her anything that she asked for. That explained why she was able to get the universal net so easily. As for now, they could tell that the princess was unusually quiet. She did not talk much like the way that she used to. Chapter 2380, Being Pampered, 2. As for now, they could tell that the princess was unusually quiet. She did not talk much like the way she used to do. Her complexion was as pale as a sheet, so they could not help but sympathize with her. Men were born with a natural instinct to protect the weak. The two escorts saw how vulnerable the princess was and felt drawn to protect her. At times, they would try to do as she asked, just to make her feel better. They took a look at the Devil King and Gu Shijiu, who were walking side by side with one another. Then, They looked to Yunqing Luo, who was so weak that she looked as though she would tumble down the passage at any time. They were sad for her. One of them, whose name was Hua Qianjun, was more emotionally affected than the other guard. Hua Qianjun knew a lot about the use of poisons. Also, he possessed great kung fu, so he ended up becoming one of the closest men that fought alongside Di Fui. He was very loyal to his king. He had feelings for the princess and was her secret admirer. He had never expressed his affections for her before. Often, he took care of her needs without others knowing, just to make her life better. He knew how determined the princess was during this trip. She must be fatigued but insisted on keeping in line and walking alone without any help. She walked with her head up, but it hurt him just to see her acting so strong. When he saw Gu Shizhou stomping on Di Fui's shoe before, he was quite surprised that Di Fui was not concerned about his dirted shoe and was, on the contrary, quite happy about it. Their conversation continued in laughter. Di Fui had even placed his hand on Gu Zijia's waist. Hua Qianjun heaved a heavy sigh. He knew the Devil King very well. Di Fui was obsessed with hygiene and was reluctant to have anyone getting too close to him, especially women. Although he was kind to the princess, it was only in the form of material comfort. He had never gotten too close to her. Princess Yuanyuan tried to get his attention by holding on to his arm, but all of her attempts ended with the same rejection. At one point in time, the courtiers actually thought that the Devil King had a different sexual orientation. But later, they realized that he was not interested in men either. Therefore, they assumed that the Devil King was actually born without any emotions or need for intimacy. Even if he got married to a woman, they believed that he would hardly spend any time with her. The only way that he would treat the Devil Queen was with respect and proper distance. Seeing the Devil King's change of attitude when Gu Shizhou was around had changed their minds. The Devil King had never been so close and so playful with any other woman. He seemed always to want to have physical contact with her. The Devil King was clearly in love. None of his restrictions and conditions applied to her. Hence, the prince's affection was destined to be unreturned. Other than sympathizing with the princess, he was actually feeling quite hopeful for himself. "Princess, are you hungry?" "I have fruit," he offered while handing her the fruit. The fruit was a celestial fruit. It was a gift by Di Fui as a reward for his contributions. The fruit tasted good and had the ability to strengthen one's spiritual power. He had been keeping it for a long time and decided to give it away to Yunqing Luo. Surprised, Yunqing Luo gazed at him with her watery eyes that were clouded with tears. His heart skipped a beat as soon as he noticed the hopelessness that she could barely hide. She shook her head and said politely, "Thank you, but I am not hungry." Her voice was trembling, but she tried hard to resist the urge to cry. Under her mask, he could see her lips that were pursed tightly into a thin line. Her pale face contained almost no colors at all. Hua Qianjun could not help but comfort her, "Princess, actually. There are still plenty of men out there." Yunqing Luo gave him a tight smile and answered, I know." She must be crying. Tears started to stain the layer of thin gauze on her face. She tried to wipe the tears that kept flowing out from her eyes. Then, she turned around to hide her embarrassment from Hua Qianjun. Hua Qianjun's heart ached for her, but he did not know how to make her feel better. All he could do was to stay close to support her and keep her safe. "Are you tired? Can I give you a hand with anything?" "Thank you, but there is no need," she responded with a smile. She was finally able to control her emotions. The more she tried to look happy, the more he sympathized with her. They kept their voices very low, so the rest of the team could barely hear anything from their conversation. The sounds of wind and running water in the cave made their voices almost inaudible. Di Fui, who was still leading the way, suddenly smiled and shook his head. Gu Shizhou was busy checking the source of the running water when she caught Di Fui smiling. "What are you smiling at?" she asked. Di Fui waved his sleeve and proudly said, "Don't you think I look better when I smile?" Gu Shizhou remained silent. She decided to pretend as if she never asked. The journey had been quite pleasant so far, and about 2 hours later, they finally arrived at the deepest part of the swamp. The land was very spacious, almost as vast as the size of a football field. The gigantic beast must have spent some time here, rolling and wandering around before making its exit. There was a pathway that could lead them back up to the surface. They could not see the end but could hear the sound of the beasts growling from above. Right above is the nest of the silver ring crocodiles. Should I go by myself to lure the crocodile here, or are you coming with me? She gazed at Di Fui intensely. Without hesitating, Di Fui answered, I will go with you. Let's go. Yun Qing Luo acknowledged his response with a firm nod. Di Fui proceeded to give one of his guards an order, you will proceed with the princess. Then, he looked at Hua Qianjun and said, you will stay behind with Miss Gu and Mr. Zhu. Hua Qianjun decided to oppose, Your Highness, my knowledge in the use of poisons is definitely better than Brother Jean's. Let me go up there with you and let Brother Jean stay behind. Di Fui answered with a tight smile, are you trying to go against my command? A simple reply was able to make Hua Qianjun feel completely hopeless. My apologies, Your Highness. I shall do as told. Di Fui glared at him. He wanted to say something else but decided against it. Gu Shizhou suddenly offered, I should go with you so that we can take care of each other. She could use her teleportation skill if anything went wrong, and get all of them to safety in time. Di Fui disagreed. No, you should stay here and wait for the upcoming attack. 3 of us are more than enough to lure the crocodile. Despite some hesitation, Gu Shizhou decided to do as planned. Upon reaching the surface, the 3 of them confirmed that it was really the nest of the silver ring crocodiles. Many crocodiles of varying sizes were submerged in red mud, revealing only the surface of their heads that were slightly above water. These creatures had the face of a crocodile, but the body of a hippopotamus. They were easily the size of an elephant. If all of them moved simultaneously, the ground would undoubtedly tremor. As soon as the 3 people from the group were visible, the crocodiles were immediately drawn to them. Their emerald eyes gazed at them while they cautiously approached. The 3 team members could easily ascertain that these poisonous beasts ruled the entire swamp. They possessed an intimidating aura that prevented any other creature from getting close. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates, better experience please click for visiting. The guard who accompanied them, Jean, was an experienced fighter but was still anxious about the crocodiles. However, Yun Qing Luo did not seem to be afraid at all. She stood confidently next to Di Fui. Brother, are you sure that you will not regret any of this? Are you that cold-blooded to risk my life to get the cure? She asked while locking her eyes on him. Di Fui did not hesitate at all when he responded, this is your only chance of redemption. Yun Qing Luo closed her eyes and murmured, I may die after drawing blood from my heart. Chapter 2382, This woman is crazy. Brother Jean was stunned by her statement. Did Di Fui intend to extract blood from the heart of the princess? He looked at Di Fui silently, trying to assess the situation. Di Fui seemed calm. You can extract your blood normally. I will protect you. When he was talking, there were already 7 or 8 silver ring crocodiles rushing toward their direction. The shrieking sounds were frightening. These crocodiles were massive in size, but as agile as wolves. They appeared to be able to fly from their blood-red wings that emerged from their bodies. Di Fui leaped to higher ground and faced them head-on as he said, you won't have much time left to live. Then, a battle ensued. Colorful lights shone around them, which made it appear as though the clouds were turbulent. Yun Qing Luo looked up at him for a moment. That purple shadow that was dashing around the place was someone that she had tried very hard to get close to over the past year. It seemed as though she was shortchanged, however. When he had questioned her about the cure, he was dressed as Celestial Master Zhua. Being too captivated, she blurted out the truth without a second thought. However, the man changed back into his black attire right after she answered him. She thought that he was wearing it to make her happy so that she was more willing to draw blood from her heart. But over time, she realized that it was all for Gu Shizhou. She raised her hand and pulled out an icy-looking thin blade. There was a tube with a thick silver needle on the back of the knife. This knife would only release the blood from her heart if it were angled into the heart correctly. If the blade were used appropriately, there would not be any damage to the individual's body or circulatory system. Unsurprisingly, the blade was a gift to her from Di Fui. He said that this was the utmost compassion that he could show her. Perhaps it was true that a man's heart was cold and ruthless. He could disregard the life of his savior without a second thought, just for another woman. It was unfortunate for Yuan that her heart still longed for him despite all these circumstances. She untied her robes, revealing most of her chest. Guardian Jean was standing next to her, and he quickly moved his eyes away and turned his body slightly. This was the best angle that he could position himself in order to protect her and not look at her. Di Fui. Yun Qing Luo suddenly screamed, her voice was sharp and fierce. It startled Guardian Jean, and the sword in his hand almost fell to the ground. In the sky, Di Fui was busy holding off the crocodiles. He thought that she was in danger and finally looked at her from above. He saw her chest exposed even through the red mist. He frowned. Here, the poisonous mist was still potent. Once an individual's skin was exposed, it would be eroded by the toxic fog. Therefore, Di Fui specially requested Zhu Duqing to make a small alteration to the clothes worn by Yun Qing Luo. At the left chest position of the clothes, there was an alteration to allow a thin knife to enter and exit. It was usually tightly sealed but could be adjusted. In order to take the blood from her heart, Yun Qing Luo only needed to open a small part of her suit without exposing her skin. However, Yun Qing Luo was probably out of her mind right now. She had removed the entire suit. Was she looking for death? Did she want to commit suicide here so that Gu Shizhou would have to die together with her? This woman was crazy. Di Fui's eyes darkened. He had just attacked a crocodile and was about to go to Yun Qing Luo to try to stop her. He could see that the knife he gave her was already inserted into her body. Although it had penetrated her skin, there was no blood on the surface. However, one could see a trail of blood dripping from the knife and into Yun Qing Luo's palm. She pulled the knife out once she drew enough blood to fill a bottle of wine. Chapter 2383, Di Fui, you didn't keep your promise. This knife was specially made, and the blade had a strong hemostasis effect. After the knife was pulled out, her wound did not release any drops of blood. However, even though there was no blood on the surface, her heart was injured. When the knife was pulled out, her body suddenly swayed. It was apparent that she was really pale too. Guardian Jean, who stood next to her, quickly held on to her. Once she regained consciousness, she suddenly pushed Guardian Jean away. She held the bag of blood in her hand and looked up at Di Fui. I fulfilled your wish. She poured the blood on her hand, and it rolled down all the way to her foot. The smell of her blood filled the air, and there was a low roar in the depths of the blood pond. A slight tremor could be felt at that very moment. On the surface of the pond, a wave of more than 10 feet tall was visible. From beneath it, a crocodile suddenly showed its giant head. The crocodiles in the vicinity bowed down as if they just saw their king. The beast was more than 10 times larger than the surrounding crocodiles. Its head was the size of a big hill, and its pair of eyes looked like 2 green lanterns. However, its body was not as colorful as the other crocodiles. Instead, it was red, like the sun. Also, there appeared to be a black flower in the middle of its forehead. Ah woo! The beast screamed, and it shook the heavens and the earth. It expanded its wings, and the red muddy water in the pond gushed all around. It's the one. Quickly, run! Yun Qing Luo shouted at the top of her lungs. She wanted to retreat, but she was severely injured and was too weak to run. Guardian Jean, who had been guarding her, was unable to reach her as he was being attacked by a silver ring crocodile. The silver ring crocodile stretched out its claws and attacked him ferociously. Guardian Jean quickly rolled away to dodge its attack. But when he got up, the crocodile attacked him again. He could not get rid of the creature for the time being. He saw that the king of silver ring crocodiles was rushing toward Yunqing Luo, but he could do nothing. He was certainly worried, and his face turned pale. Yunqing Luo closed her eyes and sneered. She thought to herself, Di Fui, you didn't keep your promise. You said that you would protect me. Shua. A loud crashing sound was heard. She felt a sudden tightness at her waist, and she was suddenly thrown into the air. Her heart raced as she wondered what happened. She opened her eyes and found herself wrapped in purple cords. The one who was controlling the cords was Di Fui. He was floating in the air, and his finger was pointing at the two crocodiles that were attacking Guardian Jean. There were two colorful lights shot toward the two crocodiles that forced them to retreat momentarily. He then shouted, "Retreat!" Guardian Jean took the opportunity to escape from the two crocodiles. He tried to get as close as he could to Di Fui, and together, they ran toward the entrance of the cave. At that very moment, almost all the crocodiles were alarmed by the situation. There were hundreds of crocodiles hunting the three of them. The king of the silver ring crocodiles led the chase. The speed of these crocodiles was extremely fast. Hence, Di Fui pulled Yunqing Luo with him as fast as he could. Yunqing Luo was still wrapped in the purple cords and felt like a flag being blown by strong winds. Even though Di Fui kept his word, it was easy to see that there was a feeling of disappointment in her eyes. It seemed that he did not even want to touch her, despite the fact that she had kept her word. Di Fui, you are too cruel. She thought to herself. Yunqing Luo seemed to have spoken the truth earlier. The crocodiles did leave their territory but only up to 1,000 feet. Therefore, after the three people were more than 1,000 feet away from the swamp, the crocodiles turned back. In the end, only the biggest silver ring crocodile continued the journey. Its two big lantern-like eyes were staring at Yunqing Luo, who was still trapped in Di Fui's purple cords. Its eyes were getting red. Chapter 2384, No one can be compared to me. The three of them finally led the giant king crocodile to the entrance of the cave. Initially, it stood at the entrance and watched as Di Fui and his two companions leaped into the cave. During its contemplations, it succumbed to the temptation of Yunqing Luo's blood, and finally also jumped in. Inside the large cave, Gu Shijiu, Zhu Duqing, and Hua Qianjun were alert and ready to attack. Hua Qianjun was a specialist in the use of poisons and was also an expert in martial arts. Having followed Di Fui as a subordinate, he learned about array formations from the Devil King. Among all the guards, he was the one who learned the fastest. He was almost as good as the Devil King, so every time the guards needed to set up an array formation, he was always chosen to lead it. He believed that only a few people in the Shura world could compete with him. Therefore, when Di Fui left with brother Jin and Yunqing Luo, he immediately began to ask Gu Shijiu and Zhu Duqing to listen to his commands. Zhu Duqing had seen the formation before, and he was quite impressed with the man's knowledge. If Gu Shijiu were not here, he might have listened to Hua Qianjun's instructions. But now, he used the fan on his hand to point at Hua Qianjun and said, "Let my master set it up, you listen to her orders." Hua Qianjun was stunned, he frowned. This is not the time to compete. The Devil King will soon bring the crocodile back. Our time is very limited. Please listen to my orders and don't delay us. Zhu Duqing smiled. Your formation is far worse than my master's. If we listen to you, it will waste even more time. Hua Qianjun's facial expression changed at this remark. He involuntarily clenched his fists. Mr. Zhu, I know that you want to protect your master. However, please don't turn this task into a joke. When it comes to setting up array formations, no one can be compared to me in the Shura world, other than the Devil King himself. You are just bragged, Jin. Chapter 2385, Struck by Lightning. He had already used all the tricks in his book to try to break the array but found himself still trapped in Gu Zijia's simple formation. Shua! A big stone was suddenly moved, and Gu Shijiu appeared 3 feet away from the man. She glared at him and said, "It has been 5 minutes. What do you have to say?" Hua Qianjun remained silent. He looked at Gu Shizhou with some respect. He was willing to own up to his loss, so he said, I will listen to your instructions. Very good, you have already delayed us for 5 minutes, so you must pay it back quickly. Please move the big rock over and put it here. She pointed at a specific location. Hua Qianjun looked at the big rock, and then looked around. He felt bad. In 5 minutes, Gu Shizhou and Zhu Duqing had already finished arranging at least half of the array. There were more than a dozen large boulders in different positions, and there were several poles of bamboo standing in the gaps between the rocks. The big rock that Gu Shizhou asked him to move was the largest one in the whole cave. It was about 10 tons and was located in the corner of the cave. Hua Qianjun had to do as told, so he headed over to the big rock. Fortunately, he still had a lot of energy. Hence, he managed to move the heavy boulder to its designated position without a break. While analyzing the formation again, he seemed to feel a sense of familiarity. His heart raced as he asked, Did you learn about array formations from the Devil King? He could see that Gu Shizhou and the Devil King had quite a complicated relationship. They were probably together in the past. Perhaps, the Devil King had taught her about array formations. Gu Shizhou glanced at him with a faint smile. Would you believe it if I told you that I am the one who taught this formation to the Devil King? Hua Qianjun was stunned. How could that be? Gu Shizhou leisurely replied, Anything is possible. Besides, you hardly know me. I almost had your Devil King as my disciple before. Anyway, quickly form up the array. I am very weak, so I have to rely on both of you. Hua Qianjun felt like he was struck by lightning. While he was diligently moving the big rocks as quickly as he could, he asked, Is Miss Gu much older than the Devil King? Gu Shizhou kept silent for a moment. This had always caused her trouble in the past. Before she answered, Zhu Duqing laughed out loud. That's funny. In this world, people are respected by their capability, not by age. Take me, for instance. I am much older than Miss Gu, but I also got her to be my master. Perhaps your Devil King used to be less capable than Miss Gu, so it is not surprising that he would consider her as his master. Hua Qianjun looked at Gu Shizhou and sincerely said, I understand now. Our Devil King is more capable than Miss Gu at the moment. He is a student that surpassed his teacher. Therefore, he did not worship Miss Gu as his master in the end, right? What an analysis. Gu Shizhou was too lazy to entertain him any further, so she ignored him. Zhu Duqing used a fan to knock Hua Qianjun on the head. Where did you accumulate so much nonsense? If your master learns about what you had just said, he might peel off your skin. Quickly, get back to work. Hua Qianjun was speechless. He finally grasped the subtleties of this array formation in the process of arranging the giant rocks. His attitude toward Gu Shizhou turned from skepticism to admiration. Perhaps Miss Gu's spiritual power might not be as good as the Devil King's, but her abilities in array formations were certainly superior. Hua Qianjun could not help but stare at her again. Miss Gu was, indeed, a beautiful and capable woman. It was not surprising that the Devil King admired her so much and that the princess would not stand a chance. Initially, he always thought that Gu Shizhou was a latecomer and a third party who manipulated the feelings of the Devil King, but now, it seemed that this was not the case. Perhaps their princess was the third party. All three of them were masters in their own right, and their array-forming techniques were excellent. Thus, when Gu Shizhou instructed them to arrange the array according to her specifications, they could understand her very well and finished their jobs quickly. It was initially a very complicated and challenging array, but it was arranged in less than a quarter of an hour because of the talented hands involved in the arrangement. While they were at work, Gu Shizhou quickly explained the functions of the array, as well as the matters needing attention during the fight. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates, better experience please click for visiting. Her explanations were simple and straightforward, they were also well organized and straight to the point. Over time, Hua Qianjun's admiration for Gu Shizhou only continued to grow. She was certainly no ordinary woman. She was unlike Princess Yuanyuan, who was also very beautiful though in a delicate manner. She could easily trigger any man's strong desire to protect her. On the other hand, Miss Gu was very independent and confident, yet also charming at the same time. It was impossible for anyone to ignore her. Even if Hua Qianjun did not want to admit it, deep inside his heart, he felt that Miss Gu and his Devil King were a better match. Nonetheless, he still sympathized with his princess. Suddenly, the three of them heard a rumbling sound from above. It was clear that Di Fui and the team had successfully attracted the attention of the crocodile they intended to capture. Judging from the noise, they were coming back very soon. Gu Shizhou quickly teleported to the tip of the highest rock and said, "Stand by at your designated positions." Zhu Duqing and Hua Qianjun rushed to their own respective positions. In a frenzied state, Hua Qianjun expressed a concern, "Miss Gu, what if the other three do not recognize this array?" This array required 5 people to hold up. The 3 of them would not make any mistake. However, if the other 3 did not recognize this array, they may even find themselves trapped in the formation. Your Devil King knows this array, and I will take care of the other 2 people. While they were talking, 3 figures dashed in at lightning speed while a behemoth figure followed suit. Gu Zijia's eyes were sharp as she quickly noticed the purple cord Di Fui used to tie Yun Qingluo. Furthermore, Yun Qingluo's clothes were in a mess. Her face was slightly greenish, and her lips were black. This was a sign that she had been poisoned. Boom! The silver ring crocodile slammed into the array. Quickly, Gu Shizhou teleported to Yun Qingluo's side and shoved an antidote into her mouth. She quickly covered her mouth to force her to swallow the medicine. As Gu Shizhou moved so quickly, Yun Qingluo did not have time to prevent the medication from entering her throat. Hua Qianjun was shocked and subconsciously jumped over. "Miss Gu, what are you doing?" "Saving her life." Gu Shizhou spoke very briefly and handed Yun Qingluo to Guardian Hua. "Bring her to the corner of the cave that we passed earlier. It is the safest there." Yun Qingluo never thought that Gu Shizhou would save her. She opened her eyes and looked at Gu Exiju with complicated feelings, but she did not speak and closed her eyes again. Guardian Hua did not dare to challenge Gu Shizhou and immediately took Yun Qingluo to the said place. Chapter 2387, I didn't expect you to save her. This place was in one of the corners of the cave. If the battle went according to plan, Yun Qingluo would remain unharmed. Meanwhile, the firmament stone sent an audio message to Gu Shizhou. "Master, I didn't expect you to save her. Don't you hate her?" Gu Shizhou answered indifferently, "I hate her, but I don't want to put Di Fui into a difficult situation." The firmament stone was silent for a while. "Master, do you really love Di Fui?" Gu Shizhou was stunned by the question and did not speak. "Master, if he is not Huang Tu, will you still love him?" The firmament stone added to its previous question. Gu Shizhou heaved a sigh before answering very directly, "Yes." She had fallen in love with him, she was sure of that. It was not because he could possibly be the reincarnation of Huang Tu but because of who he was as a person. Even though she was waiting for Huang Tu to be reborn, she could not hide the fact that she had fallen in love with this man who was much younger than her. She had previously used the excuse that Di Fui was the reincarnation of Huang Tu just so that she could justify her feelings for him. The firmament stone did not expect Gu Shizhou to be so open with it. "Master, I agree. Living in the present is the most important thing. You are meant to be together." At this moment, the formation was intact. As she headed back into the formation, she warned the firmament stone, "You'd better keep your mouth shut. We have to focus on killing this crocodile." The firmament stone remained out of her mind from then on. It was a spiritual jade, and it needed to absorb spiritual power to support its normal operation. Gu Shizhou hid a pile of spiritual crystal in its storage space, so it had been shutting itself down to absorb the power from these crystals. However, it did not shut down completely. It still allocated some of its attention to sense the mood of its master. Therefore, it roughly had some idea of what had happened to Gu Shizhou recently, although it did not know the details. It observed Di Fui and felt even more surprised. He actually wore the same attire that celestial masters were used to don. Did he get back his memory? The firmament stone could not believe it. The heavenly laws would not let him restore the memory of his past life so quickly. After all, his entire existence was erased by the heavenly laws. It was a huge accident that Yunqing Luo could retain her memories of him. There should not be any other mistakes. In any case, Gu Shizhou managed to reunite with him again. Both of them had no past memories of each other, but they could still find each other by instinct. This showed that they were truly meant to be together. The firmament stone was pleased by the thought. On the other hand, the crocodile that was attracted to this place was in a difficult situation. It had cultivated for thousands of years. Although it had not transformed into its human form yet, it had already obtained human wisdom, and its brain capacity certainly noteworthy. It had no interest in humans because they were too negligible for it. That was why it did not appear even though the rest of the crocodiles were attacking Di Fui and his team. However, it later smelled the special scent of blood from Yunqing Luo, and its blood started to boil. Its blood rushed into its brain and ignited all of its cells, just like the excitement one receives from cigarettes due to its nicotine content. It had lost its ability to think straight, and as a result, it was now trapped in these giant rocks. When it came to this place, it naturally saw the large and small rocks that were arranged all around the cave, but it did not think too deeply about them. Besides, the biggest rock was only the size of its paw. Why would it need to be afraid of them? However, after it went in, it found that something was not right. Initially, there were just a few rocks around the place, but now, it had become multiple towers. The bamboos between the boulders initially looked thin and harmless, but they were now massive trees with thick trunks. These big trees were quite dense, and they collectively covered up the sky. The king of the silver ring crocodiles was enormous, so anything it saw was usually as small as an ant in its eyes. However, this time was different. It was the one that felt like an ant while everything else was so huge. Even the humans it had chased earlier suddenly looked like giants. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster updates, better experience please click for visiting. It had fallen into an illusion. Whether it was a person or a beast that fell into the trap, there was always a subconscious fear for an opponent that was larger than itself. Hence, this was the same for the giant crocodile. After it rushed around trying to escape, it suddenly felt paralyzed in fear. It had always been dominant when it fought, its sheer momentum when traveling was enough to cause its opponents to flee. It was also always surrounded by its followers, so it was never afraid of anything when it was in the poisonous swamp. However, it did not have its followers around this time, it was all alone. Furthermore, the illusion made it fearful of what it saw. This crocodile was considered to be very powerful. If it fought seriously, even someone at the level of a golden immortal might not be able to beat it. However, the illusion made things different. Any human would already strike fear in its heart. The purple-robed man gave it a bad headache. All the tricks he used on it made it felt extraordinarily painful, and it almost collapsed. Furthermore, the woman in the green dress was the most outrageous. Although her strength was weaker than the purple-robed man, the angles of her attacks were extremely excruciating. She solely picked on its weak points, and it was unable to block any of the attacks. Yunqing Luo sat on a large rock while observing the battle. She saw that the silver ring crocodile was almost defeated, and it was only a matter of time before it was killed. Her fists were clenched, and her eyes also flashed briefly. The situation seemed to be a little unexpected. Guardian Jean stood in front of her and protected her the whole time. Naturally, he did not observe her facial expression as his attention was entirely on the battle in the field. He saw that his demon king was extremely agile and quick. He continuously appeared in between the giant rocks, and every time he did, he would successfully hit the crocodile and injure it. At the same time, Gu Shizhou stayed in the middle of the array. Whenever she noticed a weak point in the array, she would teleport to the position and efficiently fill the gap. She and Di Fui rushed back and forth in the battle, it was a dazzling sight watching them synchronize perfectly. As for Mr. Zhu, he seemed relaxed. He twirled his goosefeather fan in his hand, and it caused changes in the bamboos. They either grew bigger, or their leaves would turn into sharp weapons that were aimed at the crocodile. As for Hua Qianjun, he was on standby and ready to reposition any boulders that would fall out of place. Occasionally, he would even launch an attack on the crocodile when it was not prepared. Guardian Jean was so excited witnessing the scene. He really wanted to join them. Unfortunately, he did not understand this array, and he had to guard Yunqing Luo, so he could only watch in awe. He was certainly very excited, but he did not dare to leave. Guardian Jean, you can go and help them. Yunqing Luo said softly. I can't, you are still seriously injured. Someone must protect you. No problem, this place is very safe. The beast is not able to attack me here. Besides, I also have my own self-defense mechanisms. Yunqing Luo took out a magical weapon from her storage space. It was a protective cover. Once people hid in it, they were given some extra protection. Guardian Jean was slightly convinced at that point. Yunqing Luo continued, go and help them, even if it is just to help them to move the big stones around. Chapter 2389, Protection. Alas, Guardian Jean was convinced. He nodded as he responded, in that case, let me go and help them. You should still be careful. If something is wrong, do not hesitate to call one of us. Yunqing Luo nodded. All right. Soon, Guardian Jean joined the battle. He was also skilled in array formations but was not as good as Hua Qianjun. However, he had spent some time watching from the sidelines and was able to remember some steps. He was certainly smart, so that helped. He did not attempt to fight with the crocodile just yet, but instead, assisted Hua Qianjun in repositioning any boulders. Hua Qianjun had basically positioned himself at the weak point of the array. With Guardian Jean's assistance, the pressure he felt was relieved. As Gu Shizhou teleported around the place to secure the array, she suddenly saw Guardian Jean and was stunned. She asked, why are you here? Gu Shizhou quickly tried to locate Yunqing Luo. Although she found her, there was a big stone blocking most of her body. Guardian Jean had already learned from Hua Qianjun that Gu Shizhou formed this array, so he admired her. He told her what Yunqing Luo said to him and also offered to help. Since Gu Shizhou tried not to use her spiritual power, she found herself very fatigued from this battle. If Guardian Jean were able to help her, it would certainly ease her work. Therefore, she agreed to Guardian Jean's proposal. Nevertheless, before they could really do anything together, Di Fui had suddenly emerged. When he saw that Guardian Jean was around Gu Shizhou, his facial expression changed. Guardian Jean, why are you here? Go back and protect Princess Yuanyuan. You must not let anything happen to her. The Devil King brutally scolded Guardian Jean. He did not dare to refute, so he could only agree and turn around immediately. Gu Shizhou was stunned by this action and almost tripped over a big stone. Her body seemed to jerk a little. Di Fui held her from the side and asked, what happened to you? Gu Shizhou pushed him away. Nothing, quickly finish off the crocodile. Di Fui frowned. When he held her, he felt that her hands were cold. It was not normal. Just as he was about to check further, he heard Yunqing Luo screaming. Help! As he looked in her direction, he saw that the crocodile, which was still trapped a moment ago, had broken through the array and was headed directly toward Yunqing Luo. At that very moment, Guardian Jean had not arrived by her side. Di Fui was also far away from her. It was too late for either of them to rescue her. However, Gu Shizhou quickly teleported over. Before Yunqing Luo finished screaming, Gu Shizhou had already appeared by her side and teleported her to safety. The crocodile had raised its paw to attack Yunqing Luo but only managed to tear Gu Zijia's sleeve. Fortunately, none of them were hurt. They appeared in another relatively safe place, and Gu Shizhou put her down on the ground. When she just put her down, Di Fui also arrived at the scene. He grabbed Gu Zijia's hand and asked, were you hurt? Let me take a look. He was particularly worried about the arm which the crocodile scraped. Gu Shijiu pulled her hand back. I am fine, you don't have to check. She turned and teleported again. Di Fui was speechless. He looked at Yunqing Luo, whose face was pale. She looked back at him and tried to speak, brother. I am fine, don't worry. Although her voice was soft, Di Fui was able to hear it. Di Fui did not care about her right now. Instead, he instructed Guardian Jean, who had just arrived, look after her. If you dare to leave her side again, I will peel off your skin. Guardian Jean quickly agreed and did not leave her side again. Yunqing Luo pursed her lips with a pair of teary eyes. Brother, I know you still care about me, Di Fui glimpsed at her and casually replied, you overthink. Yunqing Luo, stop fooling around. Otherwise, you will face the consequences. He turned around and walked away when he finished. Guardian Jean was stunned by what he heard. Yunqing Luo. This was the first time he learned that Princess Yuanyuan's name was actually Yunqing Luo. Yunqing Luo's heart skipped a beat by the realization. Upon brief contemplation, she put on a smile on her face. What could be worse when she was already at her lowest point in life? The silver ring crocodile seemed to have sensed its death approaching. Anxiously, it became even more ferocious. Its power seemed to have doubled while its size also grew. It pounded on the array formed by Gu Shijiu, trying to find a way to escape. Most of the features behind the array were based on illusions. In the past, the crocodile used to be affected by the illusions. Particularly, when it saw a large mountain falling toward it. However, it decided to ignore them and began to counterattack with its claws when it saw the mountain falling toward it again. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates, better experience please click for visiting. After all, the mountain was just an illusion. It was just a few huge rocks. Hence, it was crushed into dust when the crocodile smashed it. It seemed to be surprised that the mountain was so fragile. Instead of fearing the illusions, it decided to attack them with all its might. It also spat a massive puddle of venomous red liquid to try to break the array. It did not hold back any of its abilities. Suddenly, the team found the rocks being destroyed one by one. Thus, Hua Qianjun quickly filled the gaps with new rocks. Unfortunately, he was unable to replace the rocks fast enough since half of the rocks in the array had been destroyed in less than 30 minutes. Everyone was getting anxious now, especially Guardian Jean. He was instructed to protect Yunqing Luo, which was supposed to be the most straightforward job. Unfortunately, the crocodile began to attack him once it figured out the secret behind the illusions. If the rest of the group were not working hard to stop the crocodile, it would have torn the two of them into pieces. In addition, the venom from the crocodile and the strong gusts of wind it created made matters even more challenging for them. Hua Qianjun, stay in this position from now onward. Di Fui made way for him. Yes. Hua Qianjun dashed quickly to where Di Fui stood. Mr. Zhu, please assist me. Di Fui rushed to Zhu Duqing and drew a spell on his palm. Print this on the bamboos with your spiritual power. Certainly, Zhu Duqing followed Di Fui's instructions. The spell seemed to be glowing on his palms as he tapped on the bamboos. Strangely, a layer of protection formed on all the bamboos that had been cast with the spells, thus, it was not so easily damaged when the crocodile smashed it. Meanwhile, Di Fui cast a spell on the rocks in the vicinity. There appeared to be a protection membrane formed around the rocks after he cast a spell on them. As a result, the quantity of the bamboos and the rocks remained unchanged for a short period. However, this strategy consumed a lot of spiritual power, and Zhu Duqing began to feel dizzy after casting spells on the bamboos. The two men with the highest spiritual powers were busy casting spells, hence, the responsibility of guarding the array fell on Gu Shijiu and Huan Qianjun's shoulders. It was not a big deal for Gu Shijiu as she was the one who created the array and was good at using the rocks as her shield. However, it was a little more difficult for Hua Qianjun as he struggled to defend himself. In just a few minutes, his face began to turn pale, and his limbs were numb. Fortunately, Di Fui often passed by and managed to help him out. Otherwise, he would have slumped to the ground purely out of exhaustion. Gu Shijiu was sitting at the center of the array. Although she was stressed out too, it was manageable for her at the moment. Di Fui also helped her occasionally, but she would frown when he did. I can manage this, you should help Guardian Hua. Di Fui looked at her and asked, do you not want my help? Gu Shijiu pursed her lips. I can handle this. Di Fui paused and sighed. Shijiu, sometimes, I wish that you are weaker. In fact, he hoped that she could rely on him. He would even be okay if she were acting like a cute baby in front of him. He would certainly prefer that to her trying to put everything on her shoulders like a man. He wanted to keep her under his wings so that he could protect her from everything, including the wind and rain. Subconsciously, he thought that it was the way they should interact with each other. He did not want their relationship to be the way it was right now. She was too independent to the extent that she might even want to stand in front of him and protect him. It was not the time to argue with her, so Di Fui left her side and continued casting spells on the rocks. Gu Shijiu paused and then smiled awkwardly. In fact, she wanted to be weak sometimes. However, she could not do so whenever she remembered that Di Fui was still a kid. She used to act cute with him when she suffered from amnesia and thought that Di Fui was her fiancé. However, she remembered everything now. How could she be cute to a child who was just 10 years old? Yunqing Luo was indeed a lovely woman, she was just like a little bunny in front of Di Fui. Perhaps, that was the reason he liked her. Gu Shijiu shook her head as she did not want to think about all these problems right now. She was not usually an indecisive person, however, she was completely helpless when it came to love. She realized that she was not her usual self. In fact, she was distracted and did not notice that the crocodile, which was busy attacking Hua Qianjun, had changed its target. Its claw nearly smashed her. When she noticed it, its claw almost hit her skull. Watch out! She heard a loud shout. Hua Qianjun jumped forward and landed in front of her. Swiftly, she quickly teleported away with the man. Unfortunately, she was slightly late. When they landed on a giant rock, she realized that Hua Qianjun's chest was injured. Dark green blood gushed out from the wound, and his face turned purplish in an instant. He was poisoned. Fortunately, all of them had consumed an antidote before they entered the swamp. Otherwise, Hua Qianjun would have been dead by now. Chapter 2391, her baseline Gu Shijiu quickly fed him another antidote, but Hua Qianjun struggled to swallow it. Unfortunately, there was no time for Gu Shijiu to treat him at that moment. When she was about to teleport away with Hua Qianjun, he grabbed her dress. Miss Gu. Gu Shijiu frowned. Yes? Since he had saved Gu Zijia's life, she was courteous to him. Hua Qianjun paused, and he seemed to feel it difficult to speak his mind. In the end, he decided to be frank. I know that our princess is guilty, but she is so miserable as it is. Please, spare her life. Gu Shijiu frowned. The reason you saved me was to ask me to return a favor. Hua Qianjun's eyelids seemed to close. I hope you can promise me this one thing. Gu Shijiu casually continued, did you know that I could have escaped the attack even if you did not save me? Hua Qianjun did not speak a word. He realized that his current situation would not change Gu Zijia's mind. He softly added, okay, just forget that I asked. Gu Shijiu took a good look at him and decided to continue, although you have done something silly, you did try to save my life. I can make you a partial promise. From today onwards, I will not get her into trouble if she does not challenge me. That was her baseline, and that was already good enough for the injured man. Hua Qianjun heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hua Qianjun knew that things were complicated between Gu Shijiu and Yunqing Luo, even though the former had saved the latter moments ago. Perhaps, she only did it as a favor to the Devil King. He would try his best to prevent Yunqing Luo from challenging Gu Shijiu in the future. If he could, he would report any incidents to the Devil King so that he could prevent them from getting too serious. It was difficult for Hua Qianjun to find someone he loved. Now that he did, it was his duty to protect her. Throughout their conversation, Gu Shijiu had already provided him with basic treatment. However, she did not have enough time to do anything more for the moment. Fortunately, it was curable. She teleported over to Guardian Jean and said, "Try to take out the venomous blood and apply this cream to his chest." Without hesitation, Guardian Jean quickly rushed over to attempt to rescue his teammate. Gu Shijiu turned back and looked around the battlefield. She noticed that only Di Fui and Mr. Zhu were left fighting the crocodile. The power of the crocodile was unimaginable since it got stronger. Di Fui and Mr. Zhu could only manage the situation using the array. Things were not looking up for the pair. Mr. Zhu's hair was in a mess, and his robes were torn into shreds. It was as if he was a victim of a stampede. Di Fui still looked tidy and neat, and although he did not seem to be in a hurry, he seemed extremely stressed compared to his usual self. Fortunately, the spell that he cast earlier seemed to work. Furthermore, the number of rocks and bamboos also seemed to increase as Mr. Zhu continued to multiply the bamboos while Di Fui used spells to make the broken rocks as formidable as the unshattered ones. Gu Shijiu was a very observant person. She had a hunch that Di Fui seemed to be waiting for something, an opportunity. However, she had yet to ascertain exactly what it was that he wanted. Although she was curious, enough things were going on at the time, so she just stayed in her position and tried to reduce the pressure on the two men. As for Yunqing Luo, she had been sitting there to meditate, like a statue. Her pretty face was ashen, which was certainly a concern for Guardian Jean and the rest. Fortunately, the crocodile did not attack her for the time being, as it was occupied with Di Fui and Mr. Zhu. Since there was no danger, Guardian Jean could concentrate on treating Hua Qianjun's wounds. Gu Zijia's medicine was very useful, as expected. Without too much effort, the poison that had infected Hua Qianjun was almost fully neutralized. However, he could not stand up on his own just yet. Guardian Jean was eager to rejoin the battle, but he did not dare to make any move without instructions from Di Fui. Therefore, he stood at the sidelines, observing the battle. However, as he was excitedly watching the scene, Yunqing Luo, who was at his side, suddenly groaned and vomited blood. Both Guardian Jean and Hua Qianjun were shocked. Meanwhile, Di Fui, who was in the midst of a fierce battle, suddenly flew over. He waved his sleeve, and it seemed like a knife that was aimed at Yunqing Luo. Hua Qianjun instantly rose to his feet. "Devil King, please don't." Before he could finish his sentence, Di Fui's sleeves had covered Yunqing Luo. A colorful light appeared briefly and disappeared just as fast. Under the colorful light, they could hear Yunqing Luo screaming. When the light dissipated, Yunqing Luo had fallen to the ground. Hua Qianjun's hands were shaking. When he was going to see how she was, he heard the crocodile's sorrowful screams, and it also fell to the ground. Its body seemed a little disfigured, and its bones were out of position. Its body was shrinking at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. Its skin gradually changed color, and it now looked like its subordinates from before, though with a slightly larger head. After rolling around in pain, it seemed to have stopped. Di Fui leaped onto the crocodile's body and stabbed his sword right through its chest. He seemed to extract the crocodile's heart and looked relieved. "Take it." The extracted heart was bright red, but there was a small groove on it that seemed as though something had been connected to it before. "Go and refine the medicine you require." Di Fui handed the heart to Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu also breathed a sigh of relief as she took the heart. "Thank you." Di Fui seemed rather disappointed by her reply. Instead of throwing a tantrum, he said, "This will be more effective when it is fresh. You should start refining it now." Gu Shijiu did not want to delay the process either. After all, everything else was already prepared. Hence, she started the process. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster updates. Better experience. Please click for visiting. Master, please look at the princess. Something is not quite right. Hua Qianjun pleaded. Di Fui turned and slowly walked to Yun Qingluo's side. He looked down at her for a moment and said, "You deserve it." He waved his sleeves, and Yun Qingluo rolled over on the ground. She seemed to have been hiding something which was now exposed. It was a blood-red worm that was shaped like a spoon. It seemed to be biting something. It was biting a heart. It was a relatively small heart, which was probably half the size of a normal human heart. There seemed to be a big hole in it at the moment. Yun Qingluo was in excruciating pain, her body was curled up like a ball as she rolled on the ground. Yun Qingluo sensed Di Fui's presence, she trembled as she looked up at him. She raised her hand toward him while her lips trembled uncontrollably. She said 2 words, "Save me." Di Fui smirked but did not extend his hand to her. Instead, he said, "The heart of the little demon you raised is being consumed, and you will feel the same feeling in your hollow heart. Does it feel good?" Yun Qingluo's body stiffened in fear by his response. She looked panicked. What? What? Hua Qianjun and Guardian Jean were also confused. They looked at each other and looked back at the little heart that was in Yun Qingluo's possession. It was an evil trick used to raise a demon in the Shura world. In the early days, many devils were raising little demon in the devil kingdom. They raised them for their own use, most often to be a weapon for killing. But who did the little heart belong to? It was very cruel to refine a little demon in the devil world. One needed to kill children cruelly and condense their grievances into a little demon. Due to the process of creating a little demon, the creature would often appear in a gaseous state. Even if it looked like a human being, it had no physical body, and naturally, it would not have a heart. Di Fui sat on a large stone, faintly glaring at her, still trying to pretend that you are innocent. Yun Qingluo, do you think that you are that good at hiding the truth? Do you think I really believe you? The rest of the group were puzzled by his harsh remarks, but they could see that Di Fui was serious, so they merely stayed quiet and continued to listen. Di Fui spoke again, "You told me that the heart of this crocodile could be used to refine the medicine required to detoxify the poison in Gu Zijia's body. That is true. However, if I had killed it by ordinary means, its heart would have been useless to me. It would not be able to produce the required antidote, right?" Yun Qingluo closed her eyes. Di Fui had unraveled her secret plan. There was nothing she could do to defend herself now. However, she wondered how he found out the truth. "You. How did you figure it out?" Di Fui faintly responded, "You have been planning this trick for hundreds of years. You even refined such a special poison just to kill Gu Shijiu. You hate her so much, yet you told me the way to heal her so easily." Easy? Was it not obvious that you had tortured me ruthlessly? The torture was merely a punishment for your evil deed. However, I am aware that your body has a special characteristic, it is highly resistant to pain. Although you pretended to look like you were in a lot of pain, it was actually very minimal, right? Yun Qingluo bit her lip. She did not expect that Di Fui to know her deepest secret. Her soul had been reincarnated after she fell into deadly magma in her previous life. When she woke up, she was in the Shura world, but her reincarnation was rather unnatural. She did not have parents, but she still retained the memories that she accumulated over her past 3 lives. Furthermore, she was given a body that was highly resistant to pain. After wandering the Shura world for many years, she finally met Yun Yanli, who had accidentally fallen into this place. Having gravitated to him, she became a tool for Yun Yanli to practice his dark sorcery. However, she did not wish to continue being his tool. When Di Fui tortured her, she tried very hard to make it seem as though it was excruciating. She thought that her performance was good enough to fool him. Hence, Di Fui's sudden revelation came as a surprise to her. If you want to deceive someone successfully, you need to tell them most of the truth in your lie. Therefore, I believed what you said when you told me that I needed to retrieve the heart of a specific crocodile. However, I also knew that